So we'll make a very quick obstacle or challenge here for level 2. I mean, I realize that collecting 3 coins is not much of a challenge, but what we're doing here is covering some of these very fundamental concepts and hoping that you'll be able to apply them in different ways to make it interesting for you. So the fundamental idea we're going to look at today really is triggering an animation. So we're going to animate an object and set up a trigger for that object. So first of all, we're going to add in a cube. And I think what we'll do is we'll just make one of these coins a little bit higher than the rest. So first of all, we'll add in a cube. And the cube is going to be the platform we're going to use to get to that last coin. Let me think what would be the best way of doing this. Well, let's just set up how high the coin's got to go. I think if we just go into a front view here, we can check that we're lining up that cube just with G and Z, lining it up with the surface of our ground. And then we'll drag this empty that's spawning our coin so that it lines up with that cube. So just grabbing it and dragging it on the x-axis and then the y just to center it. And then again, looking from the front, we'll grab it on the z-axis, G and Z, and we'll just move it up to about there, something like that. And then hopefully, let's just check if we hide this with H and press play, we'll just make sure we cannot get to that coin. It's just slightly out of reach there. If you do Alt-H to unhide that cube, it'll unhide everything. So we also have to rehide our coin object. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to animate this cube from below the ground to this position here. And then we'll set up a little trigger that plays that animation. So the first thing we'll do is we'll animate the cube. So we're going to switch our logic editor to something called the dope sheet, which is a timeline for animation. We're going to switch the dope sheet to an action editor mode. And we're going to create a new action. So actions are just chunks of animation that the game engine can call up when need be. So click new, and we'll name this action rise. So this cube is going to rise up from below. And this is our last point. This is the last point here. This is the sort of final position of our animation. We've lined it up so that it's lined up along the surface here. So what we're going to do is move the playhead. This blue line here is our playhead. We're going at roughly 30 frames per second. So if we want it to take 2 seconds to appear, we'll put the playhead on frame 60. And we're going to insert a keyframe. The keyframe is just a key position for this object. So I'm going to hit I to insert, and this is where we can select the different types of keyframe. We are going to be changing this cube's location, so we need a location type of keyframe. So we just left click on location, and you'll see we've got this little orange dot. That's our keyframe. And then we bring the playhead back to the start, to frame 1 or 0, and we're going to hit G and Z and move our cube just below the ground. And we're going to hit another keyframe for this position, I, and insert another location. So now we've got the start position and the end position. So if we press spacebar here, it should be able to roughly show us how fast that is. That's fine. Okay, so our action, the action editor, like most things in Blender, can be a bit quirky. Why has it done that? I don't know why it's done that. Is it a problem? It's automatically created an action. Maybe you need to create the action after you've done maybe you have to click new. I don't know why it's done that. Is it a problem? Not really. If it does this for you, you either pick rise from the drop down here and reanimate it, or we just stick with this one and rename it something that we can call up. Rise cube rise, something like that. as long as we've got these keyframes animating the cube from below the ground to above the ground, and we've got a name for that action that we can call up from our logic editor. So we switch back to the Logic Bricks editor, and we need some way of triggering that animation. So I think what we'll do is just create a sort of pressure pad. So we'll add a cylinder here, and we'll make a nice low poly one, so 8 vertices, and we're going to move this off from the center, and just G and Z, and just bring that so that it's just sort of sticking out of the ground there. And we're going to detect a collision with this and play our action. So add a sensor, add a collision sensor. We know we've got a property in our cube called player. So when this cylinder collides with player, it's going to send a message to our cube to play the animation. Send a message. The message will be rise. And then we need to find our cube down here. When this receives the message rise, we're going to play our action. So we have an action actuator. Join them up. Select our action, and for some reason rise didn't work, so we'll choose rise cube. And we know that our start frame was around about 0 or 1, and our end frame was 60 in our case. So we start at frame 0, end at frame 60, and I think we'll just leave it at the default play mode of play, and we'll test that. Slight delay there, so perhaps we could reanimate that very quickly. So it doesn't have it's taken too long to come up from below the ground. So I'm going to tweak that. So I'm going to switch back to the dope sheet in the action editor. And I either move it closer in frame 1. Yeah, let's move it closer in frame 1. So we'll just go, let's have a look at it from the side. G and Z, and just move it up so that it's kind of within the ground. And we can replace that keyframe. As long as the playhead is right on top of that keyframe, we can just hit I again, choose location, and it will update that first keyframe, so it will be less of a delay from frame 0 to frame 60. Back to Logic Bricks editor. Let's just check that through the camera. That's a little bit better. So now we should be able to jump up on our cube, collect that coin, and we need some way to finish our game at this point. So we'll be checking that score. We'll be checking the value of score and sending our players to a win screen. And of course, it's up to you how you adapt these techniques to make something that's of interest to you, as I said earlier.